Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. It may be the holiday season, but the grind is still on, at least if you're the main man right there across from me, or I guess next from me, Greg Cosell. How we living, buddy?
Good. Is it the holiday season by chance?
Christmas sneaks up on me in ways that it never used to, Greg. I used to know when Christmas is every year, and now I feel like I just kind of like, oh, you mean week 15? That's kind of the way that I
Yeah,
approach
that's
these
kind of
things.
the way I am. Yeah, that's kind of the
So
way I am.
yes, there is football. Well, I mean, the way that we know that it's Christmas is because there's football everywhere, and New Year's now the same as we'll have a Week 16 slate on New Year's Eve, including the Titans on the road at the Texans. Just quickly, Greg, because there's really not that much more that we can say about them other than Ryan Tannehill started in this game and looked as if it had been 10 weeks since he had played in an NFL game.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. There really wasn't much to say. I mean,
Yeah.
he only had one completion over 15 yards, not one over 20. I mean, he had a few nice scrambles. He hit the short stuff when it was there. I mean, you'd say he was efficient. He didn't put the ball in danger. Nothing really stood out. There were no special plays. We know that the O-line continued to have difficulties holding up in protection. Certainly Duncan was really poor, facing every kind of rush, bull rush, speed to power, spins, inside moves. The one area where he's really having a hard time, and he has basically since he's become the starter, and he did in college too, and I would imagine they're working with him on it, but maybe it's just not taking hold yet, is his hand placement is really bad. And what that then results in is a lack of balance, because he ends up just losing his balance. He struggles with balance and body control significantly. And obviously he did get benched, and, Dillard then came in. He didn't really get tested a lot, amazingly enough. So it wasn't, it didn't seem as if Dillard was poor. On the other side, I thought Radunz kind of held up. There were a couple of plays he looked bad, but for the most part, I think the last couple of games, Radunz has held up reasonably well.
Yeah, and that's just kind of where they're at right now. And we talk about the offensive line situation, and I'm not even saying this tongue in cheek, like that they're going to Andre Dillard after having benched him throughout the course of the season in multiple different instances is telling about the left tackle circumstance. So something that they'll have to resolve in the offseason, and we'll have several more weeks before I start asking you about Joe Alt or the kid at
Right. I think I've asked you this before, but just out of curiosity, do you know offhand how many picks they have as we speak today?
Oh, I believe they have 7 picks. There were a couple of they may have 8 because of the Byard trade. I need to refresh my memory on that.
Okay, because this is a situation, and then we can move on. This is a situation where they need to bring in, whether it's through free agency or the draft or both, ideally, a number of offensive linemen. This is not, oh, let's draft one and we're good to go. I mean, this is, especially with a young quarterback. And by the way, what will happen this week? Is Will Levis going to be able to go or not?
He did practice for the first time today. It was in a limited capacity, but they are cautiously optimistic about his availability.
Because he needs to, I mean, again, you don't want to put him out there if he truly can't go, but he needs to take every rep that he can possibly take in these last 2 weeks. It's just important to get the experience and the reps. But the point is, I think we see in Tennessee that we do have a quarterback that can play. And now he needs to be protected. Now you have to start with protection. I mean, everybody says, oh, you got to get him weapons. Yes, you do. Of course, that's an obvious statement, Bug. We know that. We don't want to throw into me and you. But at the end of the day, if you can't protect him, then it doesn't matter. And that's where young quarterbacks can get ruined. And particularly someone like Levis, who's just innately tough, that he stands there. And, if the pass protection is poor, he's just going to take way too many hits.
Well, we saw, and Tannehill invites this anyway with the way that he plays, the way that he hangs in the pocket. He's a very tough guy, but when you don't have that fraction of a second extra to kind of hang in the pocket and deliver, then you have a Seahawks defender helmet in your chin. The way that Tannehill often did. Just for the audience, 8 picks in this draft, no 3rd round pick because of the Will Levis trade up.
Got it. Okay. So again, like I said, they're going to have to be, they're obviously not going to be getting a Hall of Fame, offensive lineman in free agency because those guys aren't available. But They just need depth and competition, Buck. That's what coaches always talk about, as you know. You need depth and you need competition, and you need to address that position in a meaningful way, not just, plug in a few guys. You need to address it. I actually spoke to a coach on the Northwestern staff who said that he believes Skoronski will end up being a solid pro, not a superstar, but a real solid player. And if he becomes that, then that's perfectly fine. He's had his ups and downs this year, which is probably to be expected since he's playing a new position. And, it's just different in the NFL. So let's assume he's solid. After that, again, we have no idea what Petit Frere is. At this point, unfortunately, we still really have no idea. We don't know if you could pencil him in at right tackle and say we're set at right tackle. We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and that's the problem with so many of these players, Greg, for availability reasons or otherwise, whether it's Traylon Burks, whether it's Kyle Phillips, whether it's NPF. Chig is starting to make progress, it seems, in the last couple of weeks, even if he's got to catch the touchdown passes from Derrick Henry, because that's kind of the place where the Titans are at.
Right.
So with that being said, 8 draft picks and north of $86 million in free agency, they'll have ample opportunity to try and get an at least functional unit, because right now they are without.
Not. I mean, we're being honest. Right now, it's not functional. We're being honest.
Well, and I think, and that's all it has. Yeah, all it has to be is functional, because Greg, the AFC South is in a bit of a mess. Like, the Jags have lost 4 straight. All 4 teams lost over the weekend. The Colts have been working with a backup quarterback situation and done well with that coaching staff and Gardner Minshew to overcome some of the obstacles that have been in their way. And CJ Stroud looks like he's going to be available.
Yeah.
Which is a great sign. Scary for him to miss a couple of weeks with a concussion, but
and he's been so good. I mean, look, he was my number one guy coming out ultimately, just because, bigger guy. I mean, I thought Bryce Young, who actually had his best game of the season this past week, but hopefully that's a positive sign for him and the Panthers. But Stroud has played like a veteran pretty much from day one, just with what he sees, his understanding, his innate feel, his sense of timing, his ball location. He's looked like a veteran quarterback. So I just would love to see him play the final 2 games, just so we could see more of him. They're set at quarterback clearly. The Colts have been a very interesting team. Their defense is probably a lot better than people might think, because my guess is a lot of people, maybe in Nashville they can, but I bet nationally not a lot of people can name a lot of their defenders. Yeah. They let go Shaq Leonard, who's now with the Eagles, because a linebacker named E.J. Speed, who I'm sure not a lot of people know, has played really, really well. He's a small college guy. So, they've and Zaire Franklin has just had a really fine season at the other linebacker position. But no, they played well on defense. They're among the league leaders in sacks. My guess is most people do not know that, and they're not a high percentage blitz defense.
Yeah, no, Buckner is the star headliner on who people would know for Pro Bowls and things like that. But this is just a group of really, really solid players that play well together. It looks like that play.
They've got the kid. Isn't he the Vanderbilt kid? Isn't he?
Odangbo.
Yeah, he's a nice piece. Again, not a star, but he's a really nice piece for them.
Yeah, and so I want to come back to CJ Stroud just quickly, Greg, because we talked about him a couple of weeks ago heading into the last Texans game. But since we're in bowl season and I've got the television on in the office and there's bowl games playing out, the value of postseason play for some of these prospects while you're still evaluating, because you mentioned that CJ Stroud was your top guy, and I wonder how much the Georgia game, the Georgia tape specifically, where and just talking to people in the league like we do, there were some things on the Georgia tape that he didn't necessarily show until that point.
And I would, it's funny. I'm probably a little crazy when it comes to my watching of college players, particularly quarterbacks. I probably watch 7, 8, or 9 games of these guys. I don't watch 3 or 4. And yes, he ran out of the pocket a little more, but if you watched him all season, as I essentially did, you saw that he did have movement ability. Not movement ability like Josh Allen or Mahomes, or I don't want to even discuss Lamar Jackson. He's in a class by himself. So that's a pointless, comparison. But you saw that he could move. So the Georgia game, while while he did a little more of it and made a few more special plays, for me was not a surprise based on, the number of snaps I had watched all through the season. So, I think he's a better athlete than people think. He's not a runaround guy, but he plays with such a refined sense of timing and rhythm and anticipation that he's not going to have to be a runaround guy in that sense. But yeah, I really liked Stroud. I mean, it's so funny how one of the things a lot of people overlook until you see it not happening at the next level
Right.
is ball placement. And his ball placement is really high level. And he's got a quick, compact delivery, so it gets out in a hurry.
Yeah, he's been a joy to watch in his rookie
Yeah.
season. I'm hoping that him and Levis can go. I know they're not facing off against each other
Right.
necessarily, but just
And
for pure entertainment value at this point,
yeah,
right?
and to talk about the other team in the AFC South, unfortunately, it's been a little bit of a lost year for Trevor Lawrence. Ton of injuries. It's hard to know with those injuries if how they've affected him. We're not him, but it's been he has been very up and down in his play. Missed some reads, hasn't seen it as clearly as he did last year over the last whatever number of games when he played exceptionally well. So again, we're not in his head nor in his body, so we don't know how he's affected. I mean, obviously, guys want to play. He's proven how tough he is. He does not want to sit out. That's a good thing. I mean, this is the NFL. Guys do have to play when they have, injuries or whatever it may be. But, he just has not played at the same level he did a year ago, which I don't think means he's not a good quarterback, Buck. I want to make that clear.
Right.
I just think it's been one of those years. Don't forget they've lost some offensive linemen too. The left tackle's position has been a little bit in flux. They were playing with a rookie right tackle who, for the most part, had a decent year, but I think he's hurt now. Anton Harrison, I don't know if he's going this week. So, I think that, there's just been, and of course they lost Kirk, which seems to be a bigger loss than one might have thought it would be, but it seems to be a big factor. Zay Jones didn't play last week. I don't know his status for this week. It's just been, a lot of things have not gone right. Now that's the NFL. These things do happen, and, they're not looking for sympathy or excuses. But these are just the realities of life.
Yeah, it's a harsh reality in the NFL.
Yeah.
You're 8-3, and all of a sudden you're 8-7, and that's where the Jags currently sit. From one, I don't want to call it. It's disappointing to see the way that things have played out for Trevor Lawrence, and I think everybody would like better from him, or like to see more progress and understanding the injuries as you just outlined. Russell Wilson is in a different situation, Greg.
Yeah.
And Sean Payton just announced today that they would be sitting him down in favor of Jarrett Stidham. Now, there are financial implications that are involved with this. Russ is definitely playing differently than, the guy that we've associated with for the vast majority of his career. They did seem to kind of make him a more efficient version of himself under Sean Payton in this offensive system. But what were you seeing from Russ throughout the course of the year? Because the Broncos were one of the hottest teams in football for a period of time.
Yeah, but they were hot with Russ being sort of a complementary piece. They ran the ball a lot, not as well as they would have liked, but with high volume. And their defense had a stretch where they played exceptionally well, particularly with takeaways, which you can't necessarily count on year to year.
Right.
Takeaways are one of those fluky things at times. I mean, obviously, style of defense can sometimes lead to more takeaways than not, but there's no guarantee you're going to get takeaways. I think it tells us that he's not going to be the quarterback next year. I mean, that would be my sense. Why are they sitting him down? They're sitting him down. I don't know all the financial ramifications. I know there's an injury thing where if he gets injured, a big number kicks in. I don't know how all that works, and I'm just being honest.
Sure.
But I would think that this tells you that he's probably not going to be the guy. And I would say all I can do is tell you what the tape shows. And we know what Sean Payton, he has a long track record in the NFL with a first ballot Hall of Famer in Drew Brees. And that's what he's the kind of quarterback he wants and expects. And Russell Wilson is not that kind of quarterback. Russell Wilson leaves a lot of throws on the field with open receivers. It's been very sort of in vogue to rip Jerry Jeudy. Even Cortland Sutton's not putting up big numbers. I think that when you watch the tape, you see that Russell Wilson just does not make throws that are there. And yes, can he make some special plays still? Sure he can. But my sense overall is that he's probably not exactly what Sean Payton wants in his vision of the quarterback. Again, every coach is different. Maybe another coach sees Russell Wilson and says, that's my guy, because you know how it is. Coaches are different, but I don't think he fits Sean Payton's view of the world as at the quarterback position.
Yeah, it's just going to be such a fascinating offseason. It's always an interesting offseason when players move around to different locations. But for that particular quarterback class, Greg, Kirk Cousins hitting free agency, with Tannehill hitting free agency, and Russell Wilson, those are the three remaining of the guys that came out that year.
I guess the question is, Buck, number one, let's talk your team, Tannehill.
Sure.
My guess is Tannehill's not going to be seen as the starter for team. Now, again, when I say that, it depends on the team. If you truly believe you don't have a quarterback, then things are different. But I don't know if someone only because of his age, Tannehill's what, 35 now?
He's 35.
Yeah. So, and he hasn't played a whole lot this year. Obviously he played early in the season, but then he sat. Can he still play? My guess is he can. And it's been very difficult to evaluate quarterbacks on the Titans this year because of the O-line. Right. So it's, I think Tannehill can still play. I don't know how the league will see him. That's ultimately it doesn't matter what you and I think. I'm curious how the league sees him. Does a team think, okay, I want to sign Tannehill and he's my starter? Or is he going to be seen as, okay, we're going to bring him in for a competition guy? If he ends up being the backup, great. That's hard to know because you don't know about teams,
Yeah. And just based off how the quarterback class is shaping out right now in terms of the draft, I just to kind of, because you're correct, we don't know, but I think that is the most likely scenario for a guy like Ryan Tannehill at this stage of his career, whereas Kirk Cousins was playing phenomenal football.
Oh,
and I know the Achilles injury is just such a brutal one for a guy at that age. But
the other factor too is, look, this is a quarterback league, and I work for NFL Film, so I love to see every quarterback that comes in the league, particularly the higher draft choices, become great. That's great for the league. It's just great, it's fun. Watching CJ Stroud this year has been really fun. For someone like me to see a guy play the position the right way at such a young age, I really enjoy that. But it's not likely that, all 5 or 6 quarterbacks that are probably all going to go maybe first rounds, maybe top 40. They're not all going to be superstars. It doesn't work like that. You know that. Let's say we're talking Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Maybe I'm leaving one out as well. I don't know how the league's going to view Joe Milton, who's obviously a big physically gifted guy. He's probably going to blow it up in the off season, at the combine and pro day and, whatever the individual workouts. I don't know Joe Milton. Is he a good guy? There's
incredible human being.
There's no red flags with him, right?
None.
No, so he's another guy because of his pure physical traits people could start talking about. So let's say there's 6 or 7 guys, just for the sake of discussion, that are top 40 guys. All 6 or 7 are not going to be superstars. It doesn't play out like that. So it's easy to sit here and say now, or as we start the draft process, oh man, this is a great quarterback class. And that's what people are going to say. But they're not all going to be superstars.
Yeah. No, look no further than Trevor Lawrence and the 4 other quarterbacks that were taken after him.
And Lawrence is a good player. And sure. I just hope for the sake of Caleb Williams that everybody stops with the generational stuff. It was not Trevor Lawrence's fault, by the way, that people called him generational. He's just a guy playing quarterback. And by the way, I've been around Trevor Lawrence when he was younger. He's a great kid, kid. The guy's unbelievable, and he'll bounce back from this, and he'll be a good player. And maybe, down the road, we'll talk about him being a great quarterback, but he's not that guy right now. He's a good player, tough kid. You got to respect him tremendously. But let's leave the generational stuff alone.
Greg, I work in sports talk radio. It's already started. It's already started. It's too late to put it back in the bottle. This is just how
right.
At least we can come. You can come here to the podcast. You can preach sanity to people, and then they can do with it what they will. Quickly, the NFL Matchup Show, always a great resource for you to get informed, to be entertained on the league and where things are at heading into week 17 as we get ready to draw a close on this regular season. The Ravens already played one game of the year and just kicked the hell out of the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, they did. It's funny. They did and they didn't. It was an odd game, but obviously, the score made it seem that way. The game it wasn't really like that because I watched the tape on both sides, but obviously they won. They're a really good team. Lamar Jackson is just such a difficult player to defend. One point that I'd love to make, because I don't think people see it this way, but this is the reason. You know how you always hear with quarterbacks that can move, people say they want to keep them in the pocket. You always hear that, right? It's not because they can't throw. Like when you say you want to keep Patrick Mahomes in the pocket, it's not because he can't throw. When you hear Josh Allen, keep him in the, not because he can't throw. Even Lamar, keep him in the pocket, not because he can't throw. The reason is because if you can keep the quarterback in the pocket, you can play within the structure and discipline of your defense. Once they get out of the pocket, the structure and discipline of your defense falls apart. So that's why you want to keep guys in the pocket. Yes, they can beat you from the pocket, but at least everything you've practiced all week, you can do. You can play within the structure that you've been coaching all week, because it's just too hard. I mean, Jackson had some plays in the second half this week against a really good defense where he was able to get out of the pocket and guys abandon their coverage responsibilities because all of a sudden Lamar Jackson is running and it's human nature. Hey, he's running. He's the best running quarterback in the game. What are you going to do? Just stand there and watch him run? So guys attack him and then they abandon their coverage responsibility. So that's why you want to keep quarterbacks in the pocket, not because they can't throw.
Oh, Greg, I was talking to some coaches before the Titans got ready to play Lamar and the Ravens in London, and basically, to summarize, I was told, well, you figure out how to make them punt. Like, yeah. It's tough to keep them off the field, absolutely. So they'll play the Dolphins in Baltimore this weekend. I'm certain that's on the matchup show.
That's our part 4 full segment game, Buck. That's the big game. That's the biggest game in the history of Western civilization this year.
Well, this year,
up to now, yeah.
Since last week, yes, you are.
Since last week, right.
And at the very least, it'll decide home field advantage in the AFC if Baltimore is able to win. The stakes are huge, and Miami on the road, that's going to be a big thing for them as they get ready for the postseason and try and figure out their divisional situation. What do you like about the matchup in this game?
Oh, we could spend a half hour on this one. I'm really curious to see how Baltimore decides to play defensively. Obviously, they're very good. That's not my point. But how they decide to deploy Kyle Hamilton, who's been used as a slot corner, been used as a back end safety. He's been a blitzer. I mean, I'm very curious to see what their approach is. So, because when you play the Dolphins, it's a little different. The ball gets out quick. The speed is off the charts. I mean, look, we saw last week the Cowboys had been the highest percentage man coverage defense in the NFL. They played very little man coverage last week. They stepped totally outside of what they'd done all year. And we saw early on why that was the case, because Gilmore and Bland, Hill and Waddle can just run by those guys. Yeah. So, you have to be careful how you play. They change a little bit of how you have to play, both with your personnel and with your tactical approach.
Yeah, I haven't seen the latest on Waddle. I'm not sure if he's...
I know it says high ankle, which is normally not a 1-week injury, but hey, it's that time of year. If he can, whether it's getting shot up or taped up, whatever it is, I'm sure if he can go, he'll go.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be electric. And like Greg said, the biggest game in the history of Western civilization since week 16.
It's a generational game, I believe.
See, now you're doing what a lot of people on the internet have done to us for years, Greg, which is troll. Shame on you.
Right.
That's going to do it for us this week, buddy. Always a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your time and your insights with us. And we will do it again next week with certainly a very clear picture.